Welcome to the Terrible Podcast with your hosts from SteelersDepot.com, where you can find all your latest and greatest Steelers news. It's Dave Bryan and Alex Kozora, always lit, talking Steelers. And now, here's Dave and Alex.
Welcome to the Terrible Podcast, Season 12, Episode number 72. He's Dave Bryan. I'm Alex Kozora, SteelersDepot.com, back for this special edition of the podcast this Tuesday as the Pittsburgh Steelers are fresh off their Monday night Week 17 win over the Cleveland Browns 26-14. Pittsburgh going to 8-7-1 on the season, keeping their slim playoff hopes still alive. But Dave, the talk of last night, of course, was Ben Roethlisberger's likely final home game. But if you watch the way things ended and the emotions and everything, you can basically call it Ben's final home game at Heinz Field. And what an emotional game it was. And obviously you and I, we root for the Steelers every single week. You want Pittsburgh to win, but it felt like to me, and I'm sure to you and probably everyone listening last night, you wanted that one in the worst way, not just to keep your playoff hopes alive, but just for Ben and to have that send-off that happened after the game was won.
Yeah, absolutely. And boy, there was a couple of times in my house last night where I think somebody was cutting onions.
Tiff has to stop cutting onions at like 7 or 8 o'clock.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't even like onions, on top of it. But yeah, you're right. There was a part of you that wondered, man, how can he not go out a winner in this game? It would be some kind of cruel joke somehow if he loses, with all the dominance that he's had against the Browns over the years, and obviously the long storied career, and how this game set up when it did on the Monday night, and the significance of it with the Steelers still being alive in the playoffs, and everything that just went along into kind of the drama that made it up or led up into that. And I wondered to myself several times ahead of that game is, man, what happens? What happens if he does, or if they do lose this game? Hell of a damn way to unfortunately have the season in and all like that. But fortunately, it went in the Steelers' favor, and probably somewhat similar to maybe kind of what we thought it would take for the Steelers to win this game. Mm-hmm. I think the Browns kind of helped facilitate it on their end, especially with their play on the offensive side of football. And they were banged up quite a bit. They came into the game. The Steelers were banged up too, to be honest. But that defense was already lacking a few players for the Browns going into this game, and then they suffered a couple injuries, I think, to a few significant players on defense in that first half there. So the second half defense that the Steelers faced, wasn't a prime unit. And once again, the Browns offense really wasn't all that. I'm surprised, and we'll get into this, I'm sure, in a little bit. I'm surprised they didn't run the ball, forced to run a little bit more in that game. But the key thing is the Steelers came away with they did just enough to get the victory, and they're still alive, man. I mean, I know it takes some crazy things to happen here in Week 18. Obviously, the Steelers have to beat the Ravens next Sunday afternoon, and got to get the Jaguars to do the unthinkable and beat the Colts. But I mean, we've seen.
Was a stat that you had about the Colts in Jacksonville?
It's like 0-6, I think. I think the Colts are 0-6 in Jacksonville in their last 6 games there, and this has been a season of any given Sunday for sure. So where would you like to start after I started?
Just this game had 2 different feels to it. It had the feel, although it was not a regular season finale, it had the feel of a Week 17 Steelers-Browns finale of, so many years and instances in the past where, Cleveland had a quarterback that was ill-equipped to play, got sacked a bunch, Pittsburgh ran the ball and kind of grinded out a win. Also had kind of a, while this was Ben's last season, it had Ben's first season kind of feel where he didn't do a whole lot in terms of productivity, but the run game was excellent. The defense made splash plays, and that was enough to win. So it was kind of a throwback 2004 to 2021, 2022. But to start this game here, I think you have to recognize the trench play, and that is to find the Steelers team so much this year, both offensively and defensively, and Pittsburgh won both of those battles last night. Now, you're right that it was surprising to see Nick Chubb used so little in a game that never really got out of hand from the Browns standpoint, but for Pittsburgh running for $190, the most they've run for in a game in over 4 years happened last night. And so 190 as a team, 188 for Najee Harris. That's obviously a career high, season high for him. And then to hold the Browns to 93. So in the 2 games against the Browns, both victories, Cleveland ran for 98 and 93 rushing yards. And that kind of tells the story right there.
Boy, I tell you, the all 22 ought to be very, very enjoyable to watch from an end zone view when it comes to that offensive line there. And I mean, they're just on the TV tape alone. And once again, it's dangerous to judge the play of trench play by TV tape and TV tape alone. But what we've witnessed so far this season on TV tape, it wasn't hard to pick out several plays throughout this game in which you thought, my God, they're blowing it up. They're blowing off the line here, and really the only difference that was made this past week was one that we've been calling for there. J.C. Hassenauer getting to start at center in place of Kendrick Green, who went into this game questionable with a calf injury there. And look, I gotta phrase this properly here. In no way, shape, or form is JC going to be considered an all-pro, a Pro Bowl player. There were instances of JC on the ground on a couple of plays as well, too. I'm not going to run from that aspect of it. But just on a play-by-play totality of it all, JC Hassenauer was 8 times the center, I think, that we've seen Kendrick Green be this season. And, obviously there was some good execution along the rest of the offensive line as well, too. And Najee Harris certainly played his part in this with another thing we call for hitting those holes, and then he made people miss quite a bit. A good portion of his yards came after first contact in this game. Really, there was a demeanor, I think, an overall demeanor, not only with Najee, but with the offensive linemen as well, too, that we really haven't seen together this year. We have seen Najee obviously do well with yards after contact this year. There have been sporadic instances here and there in some games of some nice run blocking, very few and far between. But I think what we witnessed Monday night was a totality, at least for most of the game, of the offensive line being in concert with their running back there. And that obviously paid dividends. Was a huge part of that game.
Well said. Maybe one of the only times, maybe the first time all season, maybe the Broncos game as well, where the run game came together, O-line and back. And it wasn't Najee Harris getting 3 yards out of 1 yard. He was getting 8 yards out of 5 yards, getting those extra yards after contact after already getting a healthy gain before that contact happened, before he's able to really finish the play. Although I think Next Gen Stats, I don't know if the stats are accurate. I don't know how they score things, but they said 181 of Harris's 188 yards came after contact. So basically all of them. I don't know that it didn't feel that way watching it live and watching it back. But regardless, Harris was excellent. This one, by far his best game of the season. Offensive line, a really good performance. And so credit to those guys. But if you're Chris Morgan, not a bad way to debut as a head offensive line coach of the Pittsburgh Steelers for your hopeful job interview in the offseason. So, I mean, again, is there a full correlation there? No, probably not. Same with Hassenauer at center, but Hassenauer helped. And for Morgan, it was a good performance for that group and for this run game.
Boy, did in the land of the blind, the guy with the one eye is the king, right? I mean,
that was hairy.
Literally, I mean, we when you look at the chicken, that there's what has been the Steelers' offensive line and really running game as a whole this season, and you look at what transpired, and once again, it wasn't perfect. and the fact that Najee did have to get so many yards. And I don't know if Next Gen registers that from behind the line of scrimmage. They have to. I'm pretty sure that they do register those yards after contact, being after. Being if he is hit in the backfield as well too. So I think they start counting from that aspect. They're not 100% sure, but I'm with you. It didn't feel like that many yards came after first contact, but his two long runs, obviously there was a little bit of contact before breaking both those runs. And when you look at what was it, 37 and 30, I mean, there's 67 yards of in two runs right there. And let's even say 60 of them came after contact. Well, that's a third of what I guess they're saying that he got out after contact in that game. All that stat aside, you rewind all the way back to training camp and Adrian Clemens saying we're going to have a physical mentality, a bully mentality, this, that, and the other. We never really saw that manifest itself throughout the season. Well, I think to some degree, once again, I think we saw that against the Browns, and it was evident too that Najee Harris was doing unlike the last two games, he was slamming it up in there. And if there's 5 yards there, go get the 5 yards. And in this case, he was putting the ball, trying to get the yards that were there. And then as a byproduct of that, he was getting another 3 or 4 yards on top of it, really. And Mike Tomlin said, falling forward quite a bit in this game. And, man, it was good to see just the running game do what it did. And, two longest runs of the season.
Yeah. How about that? The explosive runs, how critical. And then obviously the dagger to win it.
Yeah. Move over, Mason Rudolph. You have company now. And, for them to have their 2 longest runs of the season in this game, and they only had two explosive plays the entire game. So, and we've talked about throughout the season how it's like stealing when you do get explosive plays of 20 yards or longer on the ground. And we've seen the Steelers defense give up those kind of plays all season. So it was nice finally to see the offense come through and deliver those kind of runs there. And once again, the fact that the running game was as good as it was, and what do we say? It'd be nice for this team to be able to put the game away with the run late. And oh boy, did they do that on top of everything else. I think one of the main negative things, at least from offensive perspective, was I think the second trip on down there into the red zone when they got on inside the 20 there, and I think at the time Najee had like 69 yards, I think, on the ground at that point. And then they throw 8 consecutive plays. Right. That was a bit of a head scratcher in there, but I guess you could say it came out in the wash eventually. I was worried there that at one point I think they were 1 to 3 inside the red zone percentage there. I was hoping, man, I hope that doesn't come back to haunt them, and it didn't. But Chris, back to Chris Morgan there. It just fantastic performance by the offensive line and the running backs as well.
And I'm just really happy for Harris to have a game like that, because you're right. His effort, his power, his finish has been evident, since day one. But it has been, again, just turning that, 1 yard play into 3 yards. And so it doesn't really look good on the stat sheet. Harris, I don't think he joked. I think he was being serious, called that he was going to get an ugly 1,000 yards, but it was a pretty performance to get to that 1,000-yard mark. Broke Franco Harris's record for most rushing yards in a season by a rookie. Broke the single-game rookie rushing record in Steelers history with 188 in this game. And so he has really put in the effort, done the big things, done the small things this year. So it's nice to see all that work pay off, and kudos to the offensive line as well. But the explosive runs, the 2 longest runs of the season by Harris are by the team, 32 and 37. And of course, the 37-yarder was the dagger to win it. The 32-yarder was that crazy stiff arm on MJ Stewart, who's a pretty tough, feisty guy, smaller guy, but pretty physical. And Harris made him look like me out there. And so, that's what the future needs to look like for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, he told him to sit down, didn't he? Yeah, but there were a couple sit downs in this game. Yeah. Poor Miles Killebrew was on a receiving end of a Nick Chubb sit down in that game. Look, I mean, that's obviously why you hope when the Steelers did spend the first round draft pick on a running back, that's the kind of things that you hoped that you would see. And not only did he have the rushing yards that he had 3 catches I think in the game for another 18 yards. They probably could have stood to use him maybe a little bit more out of the backfield than they did there. But if you're going to spend a first round, guys, still people are I'm sure will be coming after me and say, oh, finally, look, Dave, is running back position still fungible and all. Yeah, I believe it is. And one game's not going to change my opinion on that there. And once again, it's never been about Najee Harris, the player. I think he's the best running back in this draft. It's just the totality of me and the fungibility of the position and where it relates as to spending a first round draft pick on it. So that will forever be my view on Najee Harris, whether or not he becomes a 10,000 yard rusher Hall of Fame running back. At that point, I just don't think you're doing yourself justice by spending a first round draft pick on a running back there. But if you are going to do that, then what you saw Monday night is what you better get out of your first round running back.
For sure. And you mentioned earlier that the runs by Harris, the only 2 explosive plays Pittsburgh had on the night. And it's a good thing because they weren't getting him through the air. I mean, that was, for the pomp and circumstance of Ben's last game. And obviously you're so happy that, that Ben got the victory and that'll be just to remember. It's not the performance itself, but the numbers and the performance are not very good. 24 of 46 for $123, a touchdown, a pick that came at the end of the first half and 2 sacks. Dave, it's the most attempts. I'll frame it this way. It's the fewest yards by a quarterback in NFL history with 45 plus attempts, 123 yards from 46 attempts. And it's not even close. And so that is, I guess, statistically probably the most inefficient performance in NFL history. But who cares? It's a victory. And that's all that really matters. But this is not a game if you were a fan of passing the ball for either side.
Good, hell of a game to have your running game come alive. I'll say that there. They couldn't get anything. Look, you even had 2 early, I think, completions in this game. One to Freiermuth and I think one to Najee Harris, and both lost yardage, and you're kind of wondering, well, how's this thing going to go? And then once again, you had Ray McLeod Ray McLeod's another guy that I'd bang on. Look, I'll praise him in the fact that he's a tough SOB. Okay. Yeah. But that's, he'll block for you out on the edge. He's a try hard guy. He seems to be, a smart and understand, kind of concepts and everything that goes along with that. But, when you have 10 targets trying to run through him and he only catches 4 balls for 35 yards, that's not great there. And also, look, I mean, Deontay Johnson, those drops are starting to kind of surface again. He had 15 targets. I think he caught 8. It's hard to catch 8 balls for just 31 yards when you're Deontay Johnson, right?
Second player in NFL history to have a performance like that. That's it. NFL history.
Man, that's a hell of a stat. And not only just a hell of a stat, it's a hell of a stat because of what he can do after the catch. Mm-hmm. This isn't just a big bodied, wide receiver with no ability after the catch. This is a guy that legitimately can gain a lot of yards after the catch and get a lot of separation before the catch too. For him to have 8 catches for 31 yards and not be a running back, a screen or, those kind of things, that's hard to do. And unfortunately, I think when you look at the passing chart for Ben Roethlisberger in that game, you see why it was the way it was. I think his longest completion of the game was like 10 or 11 air yards. And I don't think he had many of those. There were a lot of balls thrown short in that game. On the balls that he did throw deep, obviously none were completed in this game. Now, the Browns, as we talked about pregame, I think we expected them to play a lot of two deep shell in this. They did for the most part. And that, that obviously prevented Ben, that and the lack of separation from guys down the field prevented him from completing a lot of those balls. So it ended up being the dink and dunk show for what you could get out of it. And obviously in key third down situations, the team couldn't convert. What were they, 5 of 18, and the Browns were 5 of 17. So neither team really deserved to win that game when you look at third down conversions.
Yeah, the inefficiency of this game from both sides is pretty remarkable and probably didn't make for primetime viewing unless you were a Browns or probably more accurately a Steelers fan in this one. Probably a lot of people switching to the Manning cast in this game to just listen to those guys instead of actually watching the game. But it just, you can probably talk about some of the Browns coverage and they made some good plays. They had that great fourth down breakup where they ran that, LeBeau zone blitz where they pop out McDowell, the defensive tackle, and they blitz the linebacker.
The P dropper, as Peyton Manning likes to say.
Right. And it looks like, Ben thinks Fryermuth's wide open because the linebacker, J.O.K.'s coming, but McDowell makes a great play there. So the Browns, to their credit, definitely made some plays, but Ben, overall was not good. The receivers weren't good. No receiver made the play tonight. Claypool had, ample chances to win some contested catches, and they're tough plays to make, but plays he's capable of making plays the offense asks and really demands him to make. He did not. There were some free plays and vertical shots where there was some tight coverage, but no one was able to make a play. So you were hoping one of those receivers would step up and kind of have a signature moment, a big catch, a big first down, something like that, and that did not happen. And so Ben, not very good in this one from an on-field perspective, but the receivers gave him no hope except for probably McLeod, who made a couple of tough catches over the middle.
Yeah, and one of the keys of the game that I had, one of my 5 keys was catch short, run long. And I felt like this team was going to need a lot of yak in this game. I mean, they never really got any of that either. So it's one thing to throw short and run long, but they were throwing short, running short in that. And, the 123 passing yards on 46 attempts and 24 total completions really tells a lot of the story right there. Now, I don't know. I have a feeling where you come in on this, that, this team's doesn't have a lot of draft capital, and they're going to have a lot of kind of holes to kind of fix here. I don't think either of us expect James Washington to be back. I guess you could make an argument that the team will consider Ray McLeod maybe a guy that they want to return in some capacity here. But I don't know about you. I mean, we'll see what happens with Juju as well too. They're going to have to re-sign. They're probably not going to have a choice but to re-sign Juju, I think, and hopefully get him at another discount rate there, because I really, really think this team needs a player that can stretch the field in some capacity, that they don't have to spend a first round or second round draft pick on, one of those third round guys that runs 4.31. That maybe body catches, maybe, that kind of player, because this team just lacks the ability to have players on the outside that can stack consistently and gain that kind of separation to deliver that big play to kind of keep these defenses honest.
Yeah. It'll be the James Washington replacement because he's out the door. He's not coming back. Juju, hopefully you can re-sign based on just the injury kind of impacting market value. But whenever you look for that Washington replacement as an outside Z threat, that's the type of body. That's the type of body you generally look for anyway in the Z receiver, but you especially need in a year like this. This offense has to be more explosive, more dynamic. Obviously, a quarterback maybe with a bit better, arm overall can play a role in that in 2022. But certainly, you're going to want someone with that crap speed this offseason.
And look, I mean, Pat Fryermuth will make you the tough catch and all like that, and hopefully he'll become a better blocker. If there's one thing that we know about both, and we knew this going into the season after the draft anyway, was that both Najee and Freiermuth are physical guys. You know, they're guys that are not going to be afraid of contact after the catch. And you know, we saw that once again out of Freiermuth in this game. But even so, he's the kind of guy that I don't think's going to have those, you know, occasional 80 to 100-yard receiving games for you either. You know, he's going to be that 5-catch, you know, 50-yard guy with, you know, a touchdown or two in a game.
Yeah, I mean, I'll take that though. I mean, if that's the, you know, production you can count on, I mean, those are solid numbers. And so, but you're right. This offense needs someone who's dynamic. Deontay's a dynamic guy, but you want someone else that can be that more vertical threat. Where Deontay's working more of the short, intermediate type stuff. Of course, can win vertically, has won vertically. They shares a pair of 45+ yard touchdowns. But just in the basic framework of this offense, the X guy is going to be more of the slant, a 3-step game, the screen game kind of guy. Your Z receiver is going to be your 5-7 step, you know, take the shot kind of guy, and your slot receiver is going to be more the option route, third down, you know, find the soft spot kind of a guy. So just in a very loose way to describe it, that's the way I think you look at this offense, and they're going to need that speed guy, as you've talked about for about 12 months now. Yeah,
look, I mean, I don't know what you think about Claypool. But you know, he is what his tape showed too, and what we talk about. He's a contested catch down the field guy that's probably not making the number of contested catches that maybe we thought he would. And he's not a guy who's going to stack on the outside. I'm sorry. I was right about this. So continue to send your hate mail to me, but I was 100% right about the type of receiver that Claypool is. And the Steelers need to find someone who can stretch the field more consistently.
Any other thoughts here with the Steelers offense? Again, wasn't the prettiest by any means. I'm really happy they won the time of possession battle and won it handily. I mean, they lost it in 6 straight games, and they won it, you know, basically 35-25 in this one. And so they ran a lot of plays. They had high volume in that probably helped with the run game, kind of wearing the Browns down a bit in the second half, trying to tackle the load that is Najee Harris. But just to kind of win that battle for the Steelers' sake, also for my charting sake, I very much appreciated last night.
Thoughts on the offense? Just, you know, overall, just the inability to be able to push football down the field. But you know that there's nothing new in that, I don't think, overall.
Yeah. Credit to Dan Moore Jr. For, I thought, playing a pretty good game against Myles Garrett, who, yes, I know has the groin injury, but I don't care. He's still Myles Garrett. He can still wreck a game, and he had a couple of pressures last night for sure. But I thought Moore, on a day where Ben threw the ball nearly 50 times, only sacked twice. I don't believe Moore allowed a sack in this one. I think that was a core for the loud one, and I forget what happened on the other one. But Dan Moore has been much improved the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season, and I thought he played, just on first glance at least, a pretty good game against still a tough opponent last night, Myles Garrett.
You know, with all the experience that he's gained this season, and doing so as a rookie against some real, you know, he's faced some pretty good pass rushers this year, and will continue to. I mean, that's the name of the NFL there. I mean, every team's probably at least just got at least one of those, and in today's NFL, those pass rushers, those good ones, usually switch sides as well too. So I think for what he's done throughout his rookie season has been acceptable. And it'll be interesting now to get these guys, you know, they know what to expect now. They know the rigors of NFL life. They know they've obviously, a guy like him has faced a lot of different pass rushers. How does that pay off for him from the off season on into his second season? You know, he is a guy now that I think, I don't see how he's not your starting left tackle in 2022, to be honest with you. I just don't. Unless you really, you know, you spent an early draft pick on a kid, or went out free agency and signed that guy and then moved Dan over to the right side. But he's more comfortable on the left side, and left-right really doesn't matter in today's NFL anyway. They'll find you if you try to hide a guy there. So I think that's their left tackle at this point, at least for the next. At least for the next season, and hopefully longer. You hate to see them have to go back into the draft, you know, a couple of years. Look, I mean, they did get spoiled from the aspect with Alejandro Villanueva that he was an Iron Man. You know, what did he start, like something like 90 games or something like that? In a row there. So you hope that Dan Moore not only progresses into his second year, he stays healthy on top of it. And obviously there's a lot of luck involved in that. But I think overall, I don't think you can be disappointed with the way that Dan Moore's season has gone.
Not at all. He's been building. That's the most important thing. I thought the first half of his season was pretty rough. I had him down for like 7 sacks in the first, 8 games or whatever, and the numbers have really dropped since. And so I think not only do you think he's going to be your left tackle going into next year, you're comfortable. You feel good about that. It's not just, we have a lot of other issues and Moore played okay enough, and so we'll just hope that he develops. I mean, you feel good about where Moore's at and where hopefully he'll be this time next summer, or this upcoming summer. So yeah, I thought just the building and the improvement. You see some of these rookies, they backslide because of the rookie wall. It's just a tough year, but you've seen Moore improve and get better, and that's a testament to his conditioning, his work ethic, and just being ready for the moment, and probably being SEC battle tested doesn't hurt. And so just happy with where he's at in his career right now.
And I think, John LeGlue is not going to make anybody's list or anything like that, but I think the Steelers have at least found themselves a backup interior guy now. He's obviously having to start now. Kevin Dotson, I would have bet you money Kevin Dotson was going to be activated for this game, but he wasn't. And once that happened, I kind of wonder what's going to happen here. Are they going to put Kendrick Green in center? In other words, is John LeGlue really going to start at left guard? I wasn't sure which way that would go at that point there, but LeGlue started. I thought gave that might have been LeGlue's best game of the season, to be honest with you there. And at this point, if you come out of this season knowing that you've got a guy that you can kind of lean on a little bit in LeGlue to kind of be an interior backup guy, then I think that's somewhat of a success when it comes to him.
Yeah, just a versatile guy, at least a guy that can wear a lot of hats for you. And should mention, by the way, injury report here, just one to note from Mike Tomlin coming out of this game. He'll have his press conference today, maybe some more information there. Trey Turner did not finish that game with a knee. Joe Haig finished that one out. Joe Haig playing a right tackle for a snap and at right guard last night. And so that's just a report there. I know Turner had a knee injury in that Chiefs game, so maybe that was a re-aggravation or a new injury, not 100% sure, but that is the one injury to note coming out of this game heading into Week 18.
Ben Roethlisberger, a little old school kind of extend the play type situation. So someone said there was maybe a hold that they missed on that play. I forgot to go back and look at that, but kind of old school Ben escape over to the over to his left and then get the ball, I think, out to Freiermuth on that play, and then Freiermuth immediately tucks that thing away, and I think gets like 5 yards after the catch, and if I'm not mistaken, moved the chains on that or came close to it on that play. So that was interesting to see. And oh boy, that Ben Roethlisberger pump fake. That guy's got kung. You're not old enough to remember G.I. Joe with Kung Fu Grip, are you?
No.
Ben Roethlisberger definitely has Kung Fu Grip there. Showed it a couple times with a few of those pump fakes.
Yeah, the pump fakes are, to me, less about fooling the defense and Ben just changing his mind. But I'll never understand how he's able to hold on to the football, because there was that one he pumped to the right flat, came back to the middle to, I think it was McLeod or Freiermuth, and the ball nearly came out, but he's able to hold on to it and make the play. So you had just those little moments last night that kind of just reminded you of what made Ben. And while it was not a good performance overall, you just kind of had those little moments. And of course, really happy you got the chance to kneel things out and have that interception at the end of the game by Norwood that kind of got Ben on the field for one more snap. And so that was just a cool, very storybook way to end things for him.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. That I think we wrapped up. I think we've got the offense pretty good there.
Yeah, defensively, 9 sacks. I mean, just a defensive explosion. TJ Watt, 4 of those. And again, I mean, this team has sacked, the Browns over the years in so many, crooked number type games against backup quarterbacks. I remember Seneca Wallace, Stad Lewis, Colt McCoy, pick your favorite, has been Browns quarterback, but they have never sacked the Cleveland Browns 9 times until Monday night. And so it was just a defensive performance. It was a defense that won this game, defense and run game for the Pittsburgh Steelers offense. But Watt, Hayward, Highsmith, even Henry Mondeau was getting in on the action. Derek Tuska, Mayfield was bad. The Browns, for whatever reason, refused to run the football, and Pittsburgh's pass rush got after it in a massive way Monday night.
Boy, Mayfield, by the time that second half rolled around, those eyes were down, not looking down the field. He was wondering where TJ Watt was at there after a while there. And, against the Browns offensive line that, outside of, I guess, the right tackle, right?
Yeah, but that's one of those. That was the rest of the play because it was, Mrs. Lincoln, because it was the rookie right tackle Hudson against Watt, and that was no match for Watt.
Well, and they were trying to help him out quite a bit as well too, but that didn't. I mean, that guy Watt was possessed. I mean, in that game, there's a couple of times he was even held, and obviously didn't. I mean, what's new there? And didn't get the call. But I mean, you pay that much attention to a guy like that, then somebody else is going to have a one-on-one, battle that you hope that they win, and we obviously saw that. That might have been Alex Highsmith's best game, not just from a statistical aspect. Obviously, he had the 2 sacks and all like that, but I just think from a totality standpoint, that was one of his better NFL games as well. Then Cameron Hayward, man, that guy, whatever you need him to do, bull rush, loop, long arm, get the hands up, bat a pass down. A man for all seasons. He's still got it at his age, man. And that was so glad to see. Mayfield was throwing batting practice there early, right? Like four bat downs, I think, early, at least in the first half of the game, something like that. I don't know how many he finished with, maybe 5 or so. I think Watt maybe got him for one other one in there on top of it. But Montravius Adams on top of it. Boy, on that one sack that, it was probably it goes down in the books as a gimme for TJ Watt there. Mm-hmm. But I think the most, and we've already commented on since Montravius Adams arrived at what a great get off that guy has. Well, not only did we see that guy's got some scoot to him. Him chasing. You look at that play that Watt got that gimme sack on where Baker slides down at his feet there. Go back and look at Montravius Adams getting after Mayfield in that on that play there. He really showed some burst there that, man, I don't think we've seen out of a Steelers defensive tackle in some time.
Well, I know Hargrave was kind of that guy, but it's been in recent, years in the post-Hargrave era for sure. And that was the first thing you noticed with Adams whenever he started playing. It was immediately obvious how quick this guy's first step was, and to have a guy that can be a nose tackle, play the run competently, but then give you a role as a pass rusher, as a sub-package guy, is really helpful. And I think Adams has been a find and someone certainly to carry into next year and probably have a role in some capacity next season, especially with Tyson Alualu's future a bit uncertain right now. But you're right, Dave. It was bad in practice. It was Watt, Hayward, and Loudemo combined for 5 pass deflections at the line of scrimmage. Last night, Watt would literally just sit there on slants and just wait and just batted him twice, and just goading Mayfield into those plays. And Hayward with 2 bats. Hayward leads the team in pass deflections. I mean, he's got 9 of them this season. It's remarkable. I'll have to look at some maybe historic numbers on that because I don't know how many defensive linemen get 9 pass deflections, but and then one of those came on 3rd down that had Hayward not batted the football, it would have been a conversion almost certainly for the Browns. And so it's the timeliness of those moments as well. Watt, 3 of his 4 sacks came on 3rd down. Hayward's sack came on 3rd down. So those guys are making big plays on those weighty possession downs. But those guys are obviously incredible. And heck, Hayward's, I think, best bull rush of the night came on a completion to Peoples-Jones. Like there was one where I think he looped and just ran J.C. Treader.
That was an inside stunt there, and he just ran him over. Yeah.
Yeah, and ran into Treader, who then knocked down Mayfield. Mayfield, to his credit, made probably the best of the night over the middle. But Hayward's bull rush, it is the best bull rush in football. It is just the strongest dude in football, maybe Vita Vea. But in terms of that bull rush, to me, Hayward is number 1.
Yeah, look, you going into this game, looking at obviously they didn't have Chris Wormley. He was out on the COVID list there, and you looked at the 5 they were likely to dress in this game, and it ended up being the 5 that they ended up dressing because Isaiah Buggs was indeed inactive there. You kind of wondered what was going to happen in this game. And once again, the Browns kind of played into the Steelers' hands, I think, by not forcing the run. I think Witherspoon even talked about after the game that they expected the Browns to kind of to force a run more than what they did in this one. And man, another stat that I wrote about in my 5 keys ahead of this game too is Baker Mayfield on 3rd and 6 or longer this year, just absolutely awful. And if you're able to shut down this Browns offense on first downs, keep them behind the chains, and then get them to do something, to stay behind those chains on second down, get them into any kind of third down situation. Or Baker's wheels been coming off on that down all year. When they're outside of 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6 type situations there, and it felt like they were able to pin their ears a little bit back, and Russian coverage going hand in hand really played a part in that as well too. So that was good to see on top of it. But once again, I think it's kind of suspect the way they called that game overall from the Browns offensive side of things there. But the Steelers defense certainly were able to get after the quarterback and that showed with 9 sacks, obviously.
Yeah, most in the game Pittsburgh's defense has had since 2001 when they had 10 against the Bucs. It was also the last time a Steeler had 4 sacks in the game. One, it was Joey Porter. Last night, it was TJ Watt. And so one of the few players since 1982 when the sack stat became official. Steelers stat 4 sacks in the game. 21.5 on the season for TJ Watt. You thought coming into this game, Michael Strahan's record, just probably a bit too far out of reach for Watt. But he has one of those classic Watt games. Most he's ever had in the game, 1 away from tying the record, 1.5 from setting the official record. I know Al Baker unofficially holds the record with 23 sacks for the Lions back in his rookie season. But, obviously you want to focus on getting the win. But, and I know Watt does not care about the record, or at least publicly, just dismisses any conversation about that stuff. But it'd be so sweet for him to get. And he better win Defensive Player of the Year. He can't do it this year. I see even on Twitter, one of the, I think, PFF guys is like, oh, Watt had a good year, but Donald should win it. Come on. If you get 21.5 sacks and hopefully 22.5 and more, you should get the award. I mean, that just it's just almost trolling at this point to say otherwise.
Yeah, and look, the whole not making the playoffs shouldn't matter in this. This guy is the reason why this team has won some games this year. Mm-hmm. Flat out. And to me, that helps constitute. If a guy is that valuable, a player on, especially on the defensive side of football, that he is the difference maker in games, then that qualifies as being defensive player. I don't care if you win 1 game or 15 games, that guy's just a menace, and you have to respect, you have to know where he's at, whenever he's on the field there. So I don't see how, of course, I thought he had a real good chance last year of maybe getting it, and obviously he didn't. But I mean, even if he weren't to play in the finale at this point, obviously he is. I don't see how he doesn't win it, but I obviously don't get a vote in this.
And I mean, he may have broken the Browns, because while the Browns gave some help to that right tackle, James Hudson, last night, Baker Mayfield after the game pretty much said, they didn't give enough help. They didn't do it often enough, and that Watt was teeing off and they weren't really adjusting well enough. And so maybe some frustration there from the Browns. Obviously, their season came to an end before this game even kicked off. But after this game to play their last game against Pittsburgh of the season and to lose in that fashion, we'll see what the Browns do going forward. I don't want to make this Browns depot, but they have a lot of questions to ask about the future of Baker and how he fits and what direction they're going to go in.
Occasionally he'll make a throw that makes you say, okay, all right, well, maybe he'll be okay. And then you see him like on that first interception of his, why he forced that ball where it did, not go underneath on another guy. I think it was Njoku maybe crossing up underneath there. And then, look at his third down stats, look at their score. I mean, we talked ahead of this game, man. This is a team that runs the football. So you're able to run the football, and you have some of the weapons that they have, and you have the offensive line that they have. Why didn't this team win more games? And that's a question that they're going to have to answer on into the offseason. Though obviously they picked up Baker Mayfield's 5th-year option, right? So they are married unless they trade him, which I guess is a possibility. They're kind of married to him at least into that season. Now, do you give him a big contract? I don't think so. I think you put him in a Joe Flacco type situation. make him earn the franchise tag next year.
Yeah, probably. Probably be their guy next year, though, because of the fifth-year option, as you said. But to go back to the Steelers here and their coverage, I thought Ahkello Witherspoon had one of the more interesting football comments after the game, saying that the Steelers played more man coverage in this game against the Browns than they had in any game he's been with the team all season long. And so we talked about that earlier in this year, about the personality of Pittsburgh's defense changing, playing more zone, blitzing less. I don't know if they blitzed a ton last night. It felt like more than what they had been, but according to Witherspoon, a lot more man coverage. Some of that was for purposes of stopping the run, but Pittsburgh got back to playing kind of more of its 2019, 2020 style of defense, and you saw the results that it generated.
And I think we talked ahead in a preview about the likelihood that we'd see, I don't know if we thought we'd see 75 to 85 or 80% of man, but we thought there was a pretty good chance that they'd be playing some more man than this, and they did. And it worked out good for them.
Yeah, and Witherspoon had the pick. He had a good game overall. I think they're down for 3 pass breakups, the interception. And so that's a guy that hopefully you're now thinking about re-signing to replace Joe Hayden, who probably also played his last game at Heinz Field last night. And so, congrats to him to do that in a victory. But Witherspoon, a long corner who can run, play man coverage, that's something to worth keeping around.
I tell you now, at this point, you kind of wonder, what has he done to his value now these last 3 or 4 games here? Because if you sneak a peek at the under 30 cornerbacks set to become unrestricted free agents during the offseason, it's not a very appetizing list, Alex, to be honest with you. And you have a young kid in Witherspoon that doesn't have a lot of mileage on him, who's obviously thriving at the end of this season, especially statistically when it comes to takeaways and those things. Don't think people won't scout that way. He's made himself some money, so I don't. I'll have to take a much deeper look at this, but I mean, if you look, he might be a top 5 cornerback unrestricted free agent target during the offseason. I think there's a chance of that happening for sure. And when you look at guys like, Mike Hilton even got $6 million during the offseason. I think $8 million per season won't even get you in the top 20 cornerbacks as we sit here today. Now, if you're a guy like Witherspoon, you're coming off of a season making $4 million, I think is what his new money average is. I mean, right now you can't wait to get to free agency, I think. And I think he would be foolish to not test free agency unless the Steelers make him pretty much an offer that he can't refuse. And that offer, I think, to keep him from going to free agency, I think would at a minimum have to be $6 million, but more realistically, probably along the lines of $8 million. But if you're the Steelers in this situation, how do you not re-sign him? And especially if you do let Joe Hayden walk at this point. I mean, do you really want to go? Do you really want? Who else are you going to sign in free agency if you don't re-sign your own free agent cornerbacks in Hayden and Witherspoon? Are you really going to leave it up to the draft to potentially fill a starting spot in that? So he's probably forced him. I think he's definitely forced himself into more money. Just a matter at this point. It makes you almost wonder if he's a lot to return to the Steelers because of the way he's increased his market value.
Yeah, that's a double-edged sword to it, where he's played well, which is good. And the bad news financially is that he's played well, and he's going to cost as such. And yeah, drafting a corner for this team with their track record is not the most comfortable thing in the world. And so I don't know what that number is going to come in. I don't have a great, picture of what that future is going to look like. But just, given that you'll have money, that you're not paying Hayden, that Witherspoon has played well, I think there is some risk that comes with that because Witherspoon's been an inconsistent guy in his career, but I think he's done well in Pittsburgh. He probably wants to have some stability after bouncing around this year, going to Seattle, getting traded. Obviously money talk, but he probably wants to try to, put down roots and stay with a team that he's been pretty successful and kind of thrived with the back half of the season. So we'll see what happens. But that's a guy that does really come on strong for someone that we, was inactive for the first half of the season, doesn't have, special teams value, not a great tackler, but has really carved out a big role as James Pierre has faltered this year. And so not only has Witherspoon been a good sub-package guy and, as a starter, as a replacement for Hayden, but a guy that might be a longer-term option come the offseason.
Let me read off some of these unrestricted free agent cornerbacks who are under the age of 30 here. These are players set currently to be unrestricted free agents under the age of 30. The list is led by monetary value here by Kevin King with the Packers at $5 million. He's 27 right now. Next on the list, almost 30. I don't know when he does turn 30. Darius Williams of the Rams. He's making $4.766 million new money average at 29 years old. Next on the list, Ahkello Witherspoon at 27 years old, making $4 million a season. J.C. Jackson with the Patriots. That's probably going to be a guy that's going to be in a little bit of demand, I think, right?
Top corner, yeah, for sure.
27 years old. He's making less than Witherspoon right now. Javarius Ward, who probably doesn't want anything to do with getting in the AFC North after what Jamar Chase did to him the other day. 26 years old, $3.384 million. And then Desmond King, I think, would be next on the list there. Any of those guys really excite you there?
Well, Jackson's going to be one of the top corners. Sure. I mean, the Patriots probably try to lock him up before he even hits free agency. But beyond that, no. Are there any guys, not for Pittsburgh's purposes, but just general market above 30 that are names that are going to be worth watching?
I mean, you're going to Stephon Gilmore, 32 years old. Kyle Fuller, 30. I don't think you want anything to do with Kyle Fuller at this point, do you?
Yeah. No, I'm just talking about just the market as a whole. Other teams, what'll be Witherspoon's market based on who's all out there. I'm just trying to get a lay of the land from that perspective. Yeah, I mean, Gilmore's
that's what I said. I mean, if you are, let's say Witherspoon is top 5 unrestricted free agent corner on the market. Is that plausible?
With the list that you're giving me, yeah, I think he'd probably be in that 5 to 6 range, probably.
If you're going to hit unrestricted free agency like that, then you're probably going to end up with a new money average that puts you at least in the top 20 cornerbacks, right?
That's harder for me to gauge just hearing about it, not looking at a list and what that money might be.
The whole supply, demand, and unrestricted free agency gets guys paid, right?
Sure. Yeah, there's a free agency tax to be paid. Sure. So, yeah, I think 6 to 7 probably sounds about right for Witherspoon. And, maybe it goes up from there. We'll see. But, there's a lot of offseason to talk about that, obviously. But I think just for the here and now, Witherspoon has played well and showed that he can be a long cover corner, and this team needs more guys like him that profile in that way.
So definitely, look, him. We've talked about the holes that this team's going to have during the offseason. It's impossible to fill all of them through the draft. Witherspoon and Montravius Adams are 2 guys I think that you really got to try to make sure that you keep in Pittsburgh at least one more year, if not longer.
My favorite stat last night, Dave, one no one's going to talk about, Minkah Fitzpatrick, 4 tackles. I love that. Only 4 tackles after 26 in his last 2 games, 14 and 12 in week 15, week 16. So Fitzpatrick did not have to make all the tackles last night, and that is a very good sign for the health of this Pittsburgh Steelers defense.
Robert Spillane, good downhill, not good.
Bad uphill.
not good uphill. Yeah. Bless his heart, man. I mean, what do you, I mean, yeah, you put him in the slot there and run that option route with a wide receiver. He's just going to get run away from in those situations there. But
then he got cooked by Austin Hooper. I didn't care about him getting beat by Landry, but Hooper burned him, and that's unacceptable. I thought Spillane played well
Hooper's, Austin Hooper's still regarded as one of the better tight ends, I think, in the league.
He's not athletic.
I wasn't so upset about that as maybe you are. But in fact of the matter is this team's going to have to do some soul searching when it comes to the inside linebacker position. Splain will play downhill hard for you and make you some plays that way, most definitely. But anything outside of that, he will get picked on as a weak link in your defense. And we've had the conversations about Schobert, whether or not he's going to be back, and obviously Devin Bush, the growing pains that he's having, and you kind of wonder if he's got much upside left to him. I'm not so sure at this point. Maybe you don't take a look around at free agency, and maybe that might get you. You better have that sewn up in the middle of your defense, and if that ends up being where you have to spend the bulk of your free agency money at during the offseason, then so be it.
Agreed. And I'm going to probably harp on that Donta Hightower train. I know he's 32, but I don't really care about age. I care about the production and where this run defense is at. Spillane's number 3. He's a backup special teams guy. He can come in and rotate, knows the defense, will play the run, well enough, but not going to be at that starter level. And that's basically what Pittsburgh said when they traded for Joe Schobert, and it just kind of spoke to how thin the depth was there. The first punt, you had Marcus Allen and Robert Spillane on punt team, and they were starting inside linebackers in this game. So that just kind of spoke to what those guys had to do. So credit to them for playing. I think Allen and Gilbert rotated throughout the game. Spillane was more the every down kind of guy, but it's not a good sign when you're starting left guard and wing on the punt team are playing linebacker for you on the first snap defensively.
Right, absolutely. And look, you had a guy that you signed off the Bengals practice squad, and T. Gray Scales was, fourth string inside linebacker last night. I think UG3, I forget how many snaps he got in that game, but I saw him on the field, I think, a little bit in that game, right?
27 defensive snaps, actually.
Wow.
So, and 24 on special teams. And I wonder where the special team snaps for those guys last night, because those guys were hand in the pile, never come off the field kind of game for Spillane and I suppose Spillane really specifically, but Spillane played 62 snaps.
Yeah, 11 special team stats for Spillane.
Yeah, and then for Allen, it was 37 on defense, 16 on special teams. So those guys putting their hand in the pile in a lot of ways. One other note here for special teams as we kind of transition into that. Kevin Rader, in 2 games against the Browns, week 17, he's got 6 tackles on special teams. So kudos to Kevin Rader. Something about playing the Browns week 17 gets this guy making plays on the coverage unit. But Boswell, excellent. You take for granted, what Boswell does at this point. 48-yarder, 58-yarder, Heinz Field, January, windy, probably a little bit, cold night, and just money on both of those. Waitman continues to punt well. Is that guy going to push Harvin this summer? Are they going to keep him around? I mean, it's with the way he's punting. I think you're rolling him out there for week 18 and carry him throughout the offseason.
Yeah, he's under contract, right? For right now anyway. So, at this point, I think you have to let Waitman. I think Waitman's done enough right now that you go ahead and let him finish it out against the Ravens. Because him being a claim, he's got to be on the roster 3 weeks, yada, yada. And obviously Harvin's going through what he's going through, and probably needs to end the season on the inactive list anyway when it comes to that. And then you let those guys push each other throughout the offseason. You don't have to worry about bringing in that other body or whatnot. You got 2 guys that already Boswell's comfortable with to some degree. So, yeah, I think you keep those 2 guys, and that's one less thing maybe to have to worry about during the offseason there and have those guys kind of push each other. But Waitman has not shrunk at all. Now that high snap and all, shame on the Browns for not using better technique, going after that, trying to pick it up off the foot instead of trying to dive at it. But I mean, he got it away, and not only did he get it away, I think it was like a 50-something yard punt out of his own end zone on top of it there. So he has punted well in these 2 games, and I think he's done enough that you go ahead and give him the opportunity to punt it out against the Ravens on Sunday.
Yeah, well said. Derek Watt, three tackles as well in special teams. I think his contributions there have been underrated this season, and the first down on 4th and 1.
Fullback dive, yeah.
Worked a lot better this year than it did the last Steelers-Browns primetime meeting, but you take it for sure. Any other thoughts here on the Steelers defense or, just offense or any other aspects of the on-field performance?
I'd like to thank the Browns for once again playing into the Steelers' hands there. I don't understand why they did not lean on the run earlier in that game, plain and simple. And as you, I think, appropriately said a little bit earlier in the show there, at no point did this game get away from the Browns where they couldn't have relied on the run a little bit more in this game. So that was and once Baker Mayfield started getting kind of shell shocked in that second half, man, I didn't get it. But the Steelers did enough to win, and that's all that matters. They've done that a lot this year, and now here they are, 8 wins and another successful or another non-losing season for Mike Tomlin. I don't know what the proper
not losing
word, non-losing season for Mike Tomlin there.
I like that you backtrack from successful because it doesn't always feel like successful, because you might still be 8-1 and miss the playoffs, or be 9-7-1 and miss the playoffs, whatever the case may be. But we'll see what happens. Pittsburgh, though, 2-4, made this game interesting at the end, though, forced the onside kick there. And so, Mika Fitzpatrick, thank you for having good hands and allowing Harris to have that 37-yard touchdown to seal things. Dave, let's talk about what happened after the game, the emotions. Ben obviously stayed on the field for quite a bit, took a lap around Heinz Field, high-fiving fans. That was a really cool moment. Then hugged his family on the field and walked off together in the tunnel. Some really cool shots there. And Ben, obviously, really emotional. Speaking after the game, didn't even take his helmet off. The guy, I don't think, wanted to take his helmet off. It was the reverse AB. He wanted to keep all of his uniform on as long as possible in this game. And just some really cool sights. And one I know I'll remember for a long time, you and everyone that was watching on TV. I had some friends who went to the game and just talked about what the atmosphere was like. TJ Watts, it was unlike any other atmosphere he had played in at Heinz Field before. And so really cool to see the fans brave the cold and make that moment memorable. And obviously to do it in victory makes it all the more special. Yeah,
there was a level of surrealism to it, especially later in that thing. And, almost a meant to be kind of aspect to it too. There, the way the kind of thing ended out there again and getting able to come back. And Mike Tomlin tried to call timeout to get him a kind of a curtain call on top of it there. But I don't think Ben would trade any of how any of it transpired last night, to be honest with you. I mean, stats are one thing, but as he said, look, he's just all about winning. And if you would have laid all that out in that game, play by play, the way it all went down, he would have signed off on that in a heartbeat, I think, especially the way it finished out there on top of getting able to kneel it down. And but it was a touch of him, especially someone like me. I mean, I watched his entire career, obviously, watched every game. There was a level of surreal, man, is this really happening? We cover the team, right? We've known it's going to be happening, but when it gets to it's happening, then you're like, oh man, is this really happening? And the way him running out of that tunnel kind of choked me up there at first, early in the game, and then obviously just a perfect visual of him walking off into the deep into the locker room hand in hand with his family was just, a level of almost perfection that Hollywood movie like kind of aspect to it.
Definitely. And just to see pregame and after the game, the well wishes from former teammates and current teammates, players like Brett Kiesel and even names that you kind of forgot about, Veron Haynes, Nate Washington. I think a lot of guys were on hand last night. I think Washington, Santonio Holmes, I believe, were there, I want to say. I think Kiesel was there as well. And so, for all the rap about Ben not being a likable guy, not being a good teammate, there's been a really good outpouring of support from guys who know him the best, have played with him, who all seem to really appreciate what he's done for them personally and obviously what Ben's done professionally as an NFL quarterback.
Absolutely. A hell of a way to go out for sure at home. Now go get that last win and at least give it, put pressure on it from some aspect of it here, So this is a Ravens team that, obviously has an even lesser chance of making the playoffs than the Steelers do at this point. And Look, any given Sunday, you don't know what's going to happen, but none of it can happen if you don't go out there and get the win on Sunday against the Ravens. So short week, obviously, and we're fixing to have to cover Mike Tomlin on this Tuesday, and this week's going to move really, really, really fast. But hopefully, we give this game the attention that it deserves in this short week. I got a lot of breakdowns coming. I think you already got a film room up on the Najee Harris game that he had there. Going to be, I think, a few more breakdowns coming early on in the week as well too. There, so yeah. Look, I mean. To sum it up, I mean, it was a great win for Ben Roethlisberger, a great win for the Steelers organization.
Real quick, before we get to read emails and close out today's show, Dave, did you watch the Manning cast, catch any highlights? Did you end up watching the game, the ESPN, or did you watch the Manning cast last night when the game was live?
No, I can't be distracted like that. On any given other Monday night, I have it on the Manning cast the whole game. But last night I taped the Manning cast, and I have not watched that back yet. I just had I can't be distracted like that.
Same. I listened to the after the game, the Cower and the Rogers time, and Cower was really fun with some great stories. That was just kind of a fun conversation, and then Rogers, talking about, they brought up the whole Tomlin moment against the Packers earlier this year, kind of the googly eyes they were playing with each other. So some interesting stuff there. But are we going to be dealing with more of the possible? Is that what was? I didn't watch any of it, so I don't know what Rogers said. Was there anything? I'm sure anything that he says is now going to lead to more speculation that he's going to be a member of the Steelers, right? Yeah, I mean, nothing different. He just kept talking about the respect he has for Tomlin and all that. Did bring up Pittsburgh Dad unprompted. He was trying to get Peyton and Eli to watch Pittsburgh Dad, which kind of made me laugh. But we'll save all that speculation for the offseason. Well, there'll be plenty of time to talk about those things. But the Cower, especially the Cower interview, or the time that he had with those guys in the Manning cast was a lot of fun.
Well, I've got it taped, or as the kids say, DVR'd these days. So I'll have to go back and watch it. Maybe I have to get back from the doctor tonight.
All those cool kids talking about DVRs, Dave. You know the lingo. You know the way to the kids' hearts. All right, Dave, let's get to read your emos and close out today's show.
All right, probably some interesting ones in here. I'm going to have to put my eyeballs on for this one here. Let's see here. Tangled up around my neck here, I see.
You good? You surviving this one?
Yeah. When you get old, you can't see things like you used to. Let's see here.
I'm sure we have some good ones. Hopefully, we have some good ones.
All right. Steve writes in, let's see, our wide receivers do a lousy job of blocking. Other teams' wide receivers seem to get after it. I think we're missing something with our coaching there. Look, Ray, you're not going to get on Ray McLeod for that, Steve. I'll tell you what, that guy will give you some effort. Deontay Johnson gives you effort on the outside. There have been some instances where you'd like to see maybe Chase Claypool do a little bit of better job there, but that's the least of the Steelers. That's the least of the Steelers' issues when it comes to the wide receivers, in my opinion, right now. Number 2, he says, need to take catch ball and do a button hook out of our playbook. Run forward, take the 3 yards you can get instead of losing 5, hitting yardage issue. I think he's probably pointing to one of those plays and Deontay's done it a few times there. Deontay tries to make things happen after the catch, that he'll make the catch and then try to reverse ground, that way. So I definitely understand where Steve is coming from there. Love Big Ben, but man is spent even though his heart and mind are strong. Steve says it's time. Number 4, keeping JC at center is a test of Tomlin's leadership. It's obvious what the right answer is. Will he care enough about performance to make the correct choice next week? Thoughts on that?
On who's going to start at center next week?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, Green, you imagine, would be healthier, but after he ran for $188 and Haas and I seemed to hold his own, I don't know exactly how well he played. It's tough to judge offensive linemen, especially centers first time through, but hard not to stick with Hasenauer for that game for sure. That's going to be my guess kind of as we stand, right now. And so I'll say Hasenauer over Green for week 18.
He has a bonus question here. How much of Ben's performance this season could have been significantly improved with a better offensive line? What part is on him versus protection? I will still, the play of Ben Roethlisberger, to me, this season has been way down the list of issues that the team has had. Could it obviously been better? But look, I think we all knew what we were dealing with going into this season with the inability to push the football down the field and all that aspect. So, I mean, if we knew that going in, I said right from the get-go, this team is going to have to be able to run the football effectively throughout the season to unlock some of the other aspects of the offense there. And make no mistake about it, what we thought that we knew going into the season, I think we have learned that to this point is they don't have a player that can consistently stretch the football field deep. I still think Deontay Johnson is your best deep guy on this team, and he's your ex-receiver that works underneath.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, does your offensive line make your team, make your quarterback better? Of course. I mean, offensive line makes everything better. It makes the run game better, which makes quarterback play better, which puts you in more manageable situations, which probably improves red zone play, situational play, I mean, et cetera, et cetera. So it's all, I think Dave and I both agree, and most fans probably do, that the offenses are built up front in the trenches with a good offensive line, good defensive line, those kinds of things. And so if you had a better O-line, you would, of course, have better results. And how much do you want to quantify the issues on Ben versus offensive line? Depends on the game, depends on the moment. I mean, it's hard to really distill that down into exact numbers. But yeah, I mean, intuitively, I think we all understand a better offensive line leads to better results for all parties involved.
All right, Colin Finnegan writes in, the O-line seemed to play well last night. What do you think contributed to this? Was it Chris Morgan, JC being at center, the emotional meaning of the game, a combination? In particular, was Hassenauer starting over Green really that monumental of a difference? I hope a lot of it was Morgan. It would be nice to roll into 2022 with a successful and experienced O-line coach entering the rebuild. Look, I think it was a combination of a lot of things. There's an aspect of this too, that Browns defense was beat up. Right. So, I think that played some role in this. Did Chris Morgan wave a magic wand here? Look, I think JC had a lot to do with this, and I think Najee being more decisive with his runs played a lot to do with this as well.
Yeah, I think it goes hand in hand. When the holes are more consistent, more obvious, your back's probably more decisive overall. There's feel like he has to bounce and create as often. But I thought Harris individually had a really good effort. And again, the yards after contact, the big runs he had, and running through guys, I thought responsible, for that. Yeah, the Browns were beat up, but so were the Steelers. They're on a backup center on their fifth string left guard. And so, I mean, they got, their own issues there. So I don't really, give the Browns much of a pass there. But so I have to watch the tape. But I thought Pittsburgh were just more physical. They created more movement at the first level, got Harris cleaner into the second level, allowed him to kind of make plays and some more open grass than what he's been accustomed to this season.
We don't have the all 22 yet, Colin, but as we stated, TV tape, there are certain plays where you can just see 3 yards in. They push that defensive front around the way the Steelers defensive front's been pushed around several times this year. It was noticeable on a lot of plays that they had a good push, and once again, Najee earned his yards in this game, and I did think he was a lot more decisive than he's been in the last 2 games, and I think that helped contribute to it as well. So I don't, we don't know what Chris Morgan did this past week to quantify that at all. But I mean, you're not going to really change a lot of what you are in 1 week's time anyway.
Yeah, you're not going to change things schematically too much. Again, I had said that it felt like I shouldn't say it felt like. I thought maybe they would run more zone last night. Najee Harris basically said post-game that they ran almost primarily inside zone, and both his 32 and 37-yard runs were off of inside zone. So that may be some sort of difference there where you're relying and leaning on some of the inside zone schemes more because Morgan has that background of being a zone guy from that Shanahan-Gibbs kind of tree.
Well, it had some insert runs in there as well too. One of those ones that Najee broke early, and it wasn't due to the great insert block by Chase Claypool at the initial level there, because he really Najee made two guys miss early on that ended up and look, LeGlue I think had a great block, turned his guy inside there to help facilitate that. And there was a good block down. Who was the tight end on that side? Gentry blocking down.
Yeah, it was Freiermuth to the outside and Gentry to the inside. I think Gentry had a down block on that play.
Gentry had a down block, which was probably the key block in all that, to be quite honest with you. But look, now duplicate it against the Ravens. So build off of that. Let's see him do it again against the Ravens. Jeff Dudash writes in from Jeff in Raleigh. David Alex, when the Steelers win, fans credit the players. When they lose, fans blame the coaches, saying that Tomlin was out-coached again. Well, Monday night, it was clear Mike Tomlin, especially on defense, out-coached Kevin Stefanski. Do you agree that was one of their better defensive and overall game plans? Well, we talked about them playing more man in this game. That was good to see. Rushing coverage went hand in hand in that. And yeah, Stefanski, I didn't understand the game plan, Alex.
Yeah, again, credit to Pittsburgh for sure. It felt like the Browns really outcoached themselves. They outsmarted themselves, running Nick Chubb only 12 times in that game and having him off the field for long stretches of the time. And so I don't know exactly what all happened there. They can answer those things better than what you and I can. But yeah, Pittsburgh had a better game plan, better execution, and got the victory.
How much would it have mattered if they would have went to JC a couple of games ago? Well, they couldn't have, for one thing.
He was IR.
Yeah,
I don't think it would have mattered a ton. I mean, they weren't beating the Chiefs because they had J.C. Hassenauer, So, and that was like the game he could have played. So, the other ones he was on IR and they beat the Titans. So, I don't think it would have mattered significantly.
All right, let's end it up here with Todd writes in, turning over stones. Hey, guys, thanks as always for the bonus podcast. I know it's a ton of work for you all and are probably sleep deprived. An emotional win last night. Ben sure didn't want to leave. I'll never forget these moments. He says, it appears that Hassenauer and Witherspoon should be stones overturned long ago. Clearly their presence was felt tonight. What on earth took so long for Tomlin to make this move? Could we have gotten at least one more win out of them being on the field? I think he goes on to write, I think signing Witherspoon this offseason has got to be a priority, he writes, as well as Edmonds, as you both mentioned before. Thoughts? Well, Todd, I think Witherspoon, I think Montravius Adams are two guys that you probably have kind of jumped to the forefront just these last couple weeks alone as guys that you probably want to think about re-signing there. And Alex and I have had, I hope we've kind of prepared everybody that Edmonds could be a guy that this team re-signs as well on top of it there.
Yeah, we'll see. I'm not the one to ask about Edmonds' proclamations, considering how wrong I was about the whole fifth-year option thing. So I don't want to, say anything in absolute terms one way or the other. But I think it would be smart of the team to bring him back if you can get him for $4 or $5 million per season, rather than trying to invest more capital in replacing Edmonds to get some sort of similar production, which wouldn't be impossible. But you want to take the risk of some guy who just ends up being worse, less steady, less consistent. And yeah, with Adams and Witherspoon, I think like Dave said, those will be more priority guys, and we'll talk about that when the season comes to an end.
Absolutely, we will. All right. With that, Alex, it's probably a good time. We got to start getting ready for Mike Tomlin from 30 minutes from now. So in the meantime, great work by you and the guys last night, Alex. I appreciate that. Guys knocked it out of the ballpark, and that's tough to do late. And all the post game stuff that was going on top of it that we try to pay attention to. But just tremendous work by the Steelers Depot team last night there, and just tons of content up on the site today to hopefully keep you entertained there. So in the meantime, we'll be covering Tomlin later this afternoon, and Alex and I will be back in Wednesday, probably another shorter podcast to review mainly what Mike Tomlin had to say, and hopefully we'll have the all 22 to kind of talk about in that show as well too. We'll probably have our beat writer John Eisenberg on Friday this week instead of Wednesday. So follow me on Twitter at Steelers Depot. Follow Alex on Twitter at Alex_Rodriguez. _Kozora. Follow the show at Terrible Podcast. Email the show, theterriblepodcast@gmail.com. If you like what we do and you want to donate to the cause, go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the donate button. Also, if you like an ad-free version of the site, please go to SteelersDepot.com, hit the ad-free button. With that, as always, thanks for listening to the Terrible Podcast with Dave and Alex.